Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're going to talk about parenting adventurous kids, and we're literally going to take the conversation to a whole new level. Our guest is Joe Evermore, father of 3 incredibly adventurous kids, including his oldest, Sam, who at age 8 became the youngest person to ascend El Capitan, the iconic 3,000-foot rock face in Yosemite National Park. Sam's climb has attracted media attention from all over the world, and the story has appeared on the Today Show, Fox, and CNN, just to name a few media outlets. Joe and his wife, Ann, have a very unique philosophy for raising strong and courageous kids, and they're truly practicing what they preach alongside their kids. This is an eye-opening story about rethinking what's possible, and I can't wait to share this story with you all today. Joe, welcome to the campfire.
So good to be here. I love the intro.
Man, what an incredible story. I suspect a lot of our listeners have probably already captured a glimpse from some of the news media that you guys have already talked to. But for those that haven't, tell us about this incredible family.
Well, I liked how you said in your intro that it's ordinary people. I think we're pretty ordinary, actually. We do all the normal stuff other people do, but what's unique about us is that we spend a lot of time mountain climbing, and so that's what we do on the weekends. That's what we do on the weeknights, and that's what we do in our backyard. We're always training for the next big thing, and so we've got bunch of exciting objectives coming up here, and we're a family of mountain climbers.
You are a family of mountain climbers, that is no doubt. So can you tell us a little bit about each of the characters in this family that is the Evermores?
Yes. So we've been gifted 3 boys. Samuel Adventure, he's 10. Sylvan Lightyear, he's 7. And then Joey Danger, he's 5. And all 3 of them come as a set. They're full of energy. And we have when you have a house of boys, somebody's always climbing something or breaking something, and nobody wears anything but pants. And so it's a pretty wild, rowdy group. We have a little pond in the backyard, and our kids basically come back to the house every day covered in mud. And we're just having one of the best summers ever with our boys.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so, obviously everybody in your family has taken on this adventure spirit, this incredible adventure spirit, and have attached to it, and you guys are really living it. Sam, in particular, being your oldest, has accomplished some pretty incredible things at such a young age. And I think just you using him as the example, but all of your family, take us through the progression of how an 8-year-old climbs El Capitan.
Yeah, good question. So really, it's when it comes down to kids, kids aren't ready to set really big goals when they're young, and so we set goals for them, and we want to train them in setting goals. I asked Sam last year, what did he want his big goal to be, and he said he wanted to play Fortnite for 3 days without sleeping and only eating snacks. And so I said, I think I'm going to keep picking your goal for a little bit bigger. But so in our family, we each have one colossal goal. It's kind of a spiritual concept. I don't know if you ever heard of a Masagi, but it's basically like you're setting one really big goal. And in our house, we have 3 rules to our goals. It has to be visual enough that we put it on the wall. It has to be something that we really can all kind of see and celebrate and get excited about. 2, it it has to be hard enough that you have to work on it every day. It should feel almost impossible when you first start talking about it. And then 3, you can't die. And so those are the 3
I,
rules.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's an important one, which means you really gotta, make sure to cover all your ducks. And we focus on mountain climbing, and really the way that you accomplish mountains is you win mountains strategically. It's really about, your preparation and your planning and team that determine whether you get that mountain or not. And almost exclusively, it's those things. Unless you get hit by a tornado on the mountain, that's you're going to get the mountain as long as came prepared.
Right.
And so, and so we start this process with our boys when they turn 5, and then every year there's a new mountain. And so this year we actually have 3 of them for each of our boys. And the next week we're going to be doing 2 of them. Both of those are in the Cirque of the Towers in the Wind River Range of Wyoming. And my youngest, Joey, is going to climb Pingora, which it takes 2 days just to hike to the bottom of it. And then if you see this mountain, it's just massive and
Wow.
beautiful. And we're going to spend a full day ascending the mountain and then descending the mountain back to base camp. And then we're going to climb another mountain called Wolf's Head with Sylvan. And Sylvan is really excited about this mountain in particular because it's the mountain that we tell our boys that me and Ann fell in love on. And so I try to climb this mountain with my wife, almost 20 years ago now. And we got stranded under this, like basically spent the night under the summit block, shivering, just telling each other stories. It was me and her and 2 other guys. And it was on that trip that that both me and Ann say that's really when we kind of fell in love, and the sparks flew.
So, Joe, I love this so much because, like, the story of raising these adventurous kids, it goes way back. But you just brought this piece of you and your wife getting stranded on Wolfhead. Like, tell us about that story.
Yeah, there was some magic there. You know, I've spent my whole life inviting people on epic, amazing trips and having them all say no to me, like most do. So, uh, and so I'm sure I invited like 50 people to come on this trip, and and I think 4 of them did, and one of them was at the time this pretty girl that I had met up with, and said you should join us, on our Cirque of the Towers climbing trip. And she was a fairly new climber. I was like the most experienced climber, but I didn't understand what I started the conversation with, which was, you win mountains by winning them strategically, having the right prep and beta and, and team and all that. And so I was the most experienced climber on the team, and everyone was really slow. And there was basically 4 of us on this wall. And we just spent way too much time trying to figure things out. And then it got dark, and I was scared to traverse it because it's a massive traversing ridge. I was scared to traverse one section because I couldn't see the holds at night. I couldn't really comprehend how to do it safely. And so we just hunkered down and we shivered all night, told stories, sang songs to keep each other from not getting hypothermia. And that's where it happened. That's where we fell in love.
This is where you fell in love. And I mean, if you're going to have this adventurous family, you got to have this test, right? To see if you guys are going to be able to create this adventurous life together.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking that, this girl, she can keep up with me. That's amazing.
So what I want to know is, if I asked your wife the same question, what would she say about that experience?
It's a good question.
Did she feel tested, or was she testing you too?
Yeah, it was interesting because she has told me since then that she was, definitely interested in me when she came on that trip. And so, um, I was, we were, I was like excited to see how she did too. But I think what I was most amazed by is that she wasn't like mad at me, that she kind of, because it was clearly my fault, the situation I got her in, and that she just kind of went through it. And it was, you know, I think I understood early on. It's like, if I could find a woman that could suffer well, this is definitely somebody I need to keep. And so, um, And so she did that. There's a certain it's quite a bit of misery that went into that story. And she put up with it. So
She put up with it. You guys survived that adventure, and it was clear that you guys could do this, the two of you. But now you kind of have like this aligned vision, and I guess I want to come back to that and your alignment with her on this goal setting. But let's go back to the three goals. So it's got to be visual, it's got to be hard, and you can't die. Can you give us some background on like where did that come from? Those three rules.
yeah, I mean, we're just trying to give it some kind of parameters of like what are
Yeah,
the things we're going to do with our kids. It came about, early on. We actually started setting rules in our marriage early on. And each rule kind of began to build on the next. And so actually the first rule that you'd like this one, is that we take one vacation of a lifetime every year.
nice.
And so we began to define what that is and like how that works. And that it really, that wasn't about having a huge budget. It was really about being intentional and actually doing that dream thing that you really want to do. And now we plan those out many years in advance. And so it's, so you combine that with all these other pieces that we put together. Yeah, you begin to see how it comes together. But one of our rules is to do the big goal, one Masagi goal per year per person.
So can you
And
share the trip of a lifetime, the vacation of a lifetime? What were like a couple of the early ones?
yeah, we spent a month and a half in China when we first got married. And we did that, like, my cousin flew for the, airline, and he basically gave us his, what do they call it, buddy passes or whatever, to fly there, and we stayed at this place that we had to hike to, and it was a great climbing area in Yangshu, and we just stayed in this beautiful place with, like, rice terrace, and the hotel had a epic view. It was, like, $25 a night, and that included, like, a great breakfast, and so it was like we were living cheaper there than here. We didn't have a house at the time, and that was just the most amazing trip, and to be honest, like, it was all done on, like, a shoestring budget. And we've done a lot of really extraordinary trips. We've been to, before we had kids, we went to British Columbia and we climbed, Squamish Chief, which is the second largest wall in North America. And yeah, just on a regular basis, we're always kind of looking ahead. We're trying to plan out what is the right trip for us. How are we being intentional about that? And I think a lot of people, they want to do that big trip, but, like, they feel like there's too many barriers to entry,
Yeah.
and honestly, like, all you gotta do is give it more intention and time and strategy, and it won't break your budget.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I mean, that's at the heart of this, what this podcast is all about. It's, helping people listen to that voice inside that calls them to adventure and encouraging people to get outside and go do those big trips that they want to do, but they kind of maybe are finding resistance or finding reasons not to go. So you just spoke right to the heart of it. And I'd love if you could just kind of elaborate on
Yeah,
it a little bit because you
well,
guys are an adventure family.
I was talking to a guy recently
Yeah.
that was telling me that, like, he wished he could go, camping with his boys, but it's too expensive. And I said, "Are you crazy? It's only expensive if you go to, like, REI and drop thousands of dollars."
Yeah.
Like, no, like, camping is about being in the dirt, just go do it. Like, go up and set up a teepee in the woods with sticks, and you will have the most memorable time of your life. Like, it's actually better if you don't make it really expensive. Like, just eat Pop-Tarts if you have to. Like, whatever it takes, like, do it cheaply. Like, that's, I think, where the error is. Like, to make it awesome, I have to, do all of these layers or something like that. Like, no, like, just learn to, like, be in the mountains, be in the woods, and do it on your budget. And so, I'm always recommending to people, just get out there. There's a really cool, there's an article, I wish I could find it. Forbes came out with an article where they surveyed all of these families that stayed together, and they tried to figure out what is the singularity between all these families that they all had in common. And after surveying 10,000 couples, the number one thing that they all had in common was that they camped together.
Nice.
I kid you not. Like, so like this is a vital thing that we need to be doing. And the reason why I believe that it doesn't go into the reason why, but I believe the reason why that the camp together holds your family together is because shit goes wrong.
Yeah.
Like stuff happens. Like you forget like the most important thing. And then you have to figure out how to survive. Like I was on a camping trip once where like we completely ran out of fuel. Okay, well now we're cooking over a
Yep.
fire with like, and we've got mountain house bags. We have to figure out how to boil water to to cook our mountain house because we're not set up to cook over a fire. But like those are the kind of things that draw you together, that bring everybody together, that force everybody, to work together. Waking up soaking wet because it rained all night. Someone leaned on the wall of the tent. Like those are the things that are so good for you, because now we live in this world that's so airtight and like, and microwavable that like don't you don't have to experience those discomforts as a family. And so, yeah, so I'm always just telling people like, listen, like do the cheap version now and graduate up from that.
Yeah, and you can buy the gear along the way, but I totally hear you about going and stocking up on everything. It's almost more impactful when you start out minimalistic, right? And you just kind of, you only buy what you need as you go. But I also feel you on the bonding, like whether it's with friends or just, other people, the bonding that happens in the struggle of being outdoors, and then just to do it with family, it just makes it so much better. There is in your story, there's like so much legacy to this because like you're a dad and your boys are incredibly adventurous, but your adventure spirit came from somewhere. And I believe that as I ask this question, we're going to get into it, that came from somewhere as well. But I wonder if we could kind of talk about the legacy of this adventure spirit and go to you. Where did yours come from?
Yeah, so I had a dad that would, he would have, 3 or 4 weeks of vacation per year, very, blue collar job, and he would take all of his time off. He would never call in sick. He would take all of his time off and do one massive trip every year. And so,
Mm,
like, I remember trips where we would fly into somewhere like Bozeman, and we would drive through the Canadian Rockies, and come down, over Seattle, and like as a kid, like seeing the wildlife and like driving up the Going to the Sun Highway, like
yeah.
it was just so spectacular. And then he would forever want to go and go to Yellowstone and the Tetons and so we were never like for me like that's where it began to birth. Like he was never the I want to summit a mountain kind of guy. But as I began to look at those landscapes, my heart began to really yearn. And I said, I began to say, like, we're here at the Tetons. Why aren't we up there? Like, what's going on there? I feel like that's where a little bit more action is. And so um, at some point I convinced my parents to get me a pass to the local rock gym. And so we started I started just going to this rock gym nearby, and I had to promise my parents I wouldn't climb outside, when they bought the pass. Like within a year, I think I was in like must have been like in junior high, like or maybe I was in 6th grade or something like that, something
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
And within a year, I had like secretly bought a rope with my allowance money, and those are some dangerous years of learning to climb. But yeah, very quickly in my teens, I went out and climbed the Grand, with one of my friends, and I did it in hiking boots at the time, and we just started summiting mountains.
Hey, we all get into trouble when we're teenagers. Mountain climbing, I think, sounds a lot healthier than some of the other outlets that some of us chose. So that's that's pretty awesome. But I think when you and I first spoke, you shared with me that you started rock climbing in 4th grade.
Yeah, so in 4th grade, a guy took me from camp
Yeah.
to this place, and I was so stoked on it. Then that's when I began to tell everybody I wanted to be a mountain climber. After I went on that little mountain climbing trip with, a camp. Um, so
Yeah.
we
So
climbed at the Delaware Water Gap, actually.
I'm
Um,
sorry, say it again.
we actually climbed at the Delaware Water Gap, and
Yeah.
I remember that, like, so to go, like, I convinced my parents to buy me a harness and a carabiner I think it was a ATC, and, which is, like, the device you use to belay and rappel. And I had learned how to belay, like, at that like, through there, but, like, I was at the top of this cliff, and the guy was like, "Hey, have you ever rappelled before?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I've rappelled before." And I had never rappelled before. And I remember clipping in and being like, "Oh my gosh, I hope I'm doing this right." I just watched what he did, and, that was my first experience rappelling. So, in a way, my kids are having it a lot safer than I did, when I was a kid.
So,
Um
so speaking of the legacy though, so you said, your dad wasn't really like hands-on wanting to climb mountains, and he was more just kind of like like he wanted to see the country. He wanted to see the parks. He brought you all with him. But in that process, like he inspired you to kind of almost, he exposed you to it, but then you kind of wanted to take it to the next level. And what I'm seeing
That's how I would
is
say.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing is like same thing's kinda happening with you and your boys, because there's like a whole whole 'nother level up that's beginning to unfold.
I'm a little scared of my kids next leveling what they've been doing. But, we'll see about that. One thing I will tell you is that it's really cool right now to do, like, soloing. There's a lot of, marketing toward it, like, a lot of climbers are doing it. It's like every time I see somebody soloing, I tell my kids, I say, "Look at that idiot over there." Like I say, "That guy is missing brain cells." Because, like, I
Yeah.
want them to never do that. Like, I'm like, "Do not soloing is not okay." Um, and,
You're talking about like the free solo climbing without ropes kinda
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, it is like, I want my kids to respect their life, and climbing is so rad and so awesome, and it gives you a sense of, like, danger and adventure. Why drop the rope? I mean, it's like it's also lonely, like, in my opinion. Like, for us, climbing isn't a singular sport. It's not a personal sport like it is for most people. It really is a family sport. And so, it's like how we bond and share and love each other, and so, man, we're not into soloing, but, I definitely wanna see what my kids can level up. Hopefully, it's not soloing.
Well, they
Um
already have leveled up, obviously, and so I think I would like to come back to Sam because you guys did this ascent of El Capitan together, but it wasn't like you just said, "Hey, let's just go do that," and you did it. Clearly, there was a progression and a build up to that, something that you guys had to train for a long time. So, I just wonder if you could kind of walk us through, like, first of all, whose goal was that? Because you talked about how at 5 you're setting their goals for them, but then they eventually set their own goals.
Yeah, so it definitely was, like, first talked about, by me and Anne. Really, we started the process with Sam around when time he was 6 on that. And but by the time that we started El Capitan, I will say without a shadow of the doubt, like, that was his goal when we got there. Like,
Mm,
you can't you can't dictate that for somebody on a wall like that. When you stand at the bottom of that thing and look up at it, it's so unbelievably massive. And, and then imagine being 8, and what I mean, most
yeah,
8-year-olds can't tie their own shoes. The whole series of disciplines he had to know, and the, just level of inner confidence that he already had to know is, really he had to have the goal in his heart to be there, and to do it. And so for young people, like, we can help them build the goal, but then they have to take it on if it really is a big goal, or else they're just gonna quit. Because the truth is you can't force anybody, or
yeah,
or you can't compel anybody to
yeah.
do something they don't wanna do at this scale. I mean, maybe I could convince Sam to do his chores, or, like, pick up the pine cones around the yard by, like, force, but 5 days on El Capitan, that ain't gonna happen. He wanted it.
It's wild. So take me through the progression of like where y'all started, the early training to how you get to the point where you are able to do what you guys did on El Capitan.
Yeah, so when Sam was 6, we put him on Lost Arrow Spire in Yosemite Valley, and on Lost Arrow, it's basically a spire that breaks away from Yosemite Peak, and
Okay.
it's right next to Yosemite Falls, which Yosemite Falls is the tallest waterfall in North America, and so it kind of when you're out on it, it feels like you're on like a jet engine because you have this waterfall right next to you, and it's so high. I mean, it's 2,700 feet above the ground, and but it's a short climb because we rappelled off the top of the wall down into a notch, and then we climbed the spire. And so, and we didn't just climb the spire, we also put up a portaledge on the spire. So we hung our tent off the front of it
Wow.
and basically spent the night just on the top of the spire, and like it was beginning to get him exposed to these heights, to get him exposed to these elements. And that was like we did that when he was 6. And then when he was 7, we took him up Fairview Dome and we camped on Fairview Dome. We took him up the Icorn Pinnacle and we put our portaledge on the front of the Icorn Pinnacle. Neither of these mountains would you ever put a portaledge, except to train a kid. And then I took him up Moonlight Buttress in Zion, which is another. If you saw this, you'd think I was mentally ill if you Googled what I'm talking about. I mean, it's a sheer wall that has one singular crack up it for thousands of feet, and we put our we climbed up with portal edges in the middle, and it was through all of those other experiences, these smaller, adventures,
Mhm.
we then led him to El Capitan. It really required a ton of prep work and training
Yeah, of
to get
course. I
there.
mean, and step two is to do something so hard that you have to practice every day, right?
Yeah.
And
So
so,
each of those things was the goal for that year leading to El Capitan. Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. So, how do the kids I mean, you guys have that, and I want to get into the philosophy behind it because there's a bigger philosophy that you and your wife have kind of attached to or developed really on your own. But like, how have they embraced this sort of way of life?
Well, we talk a lot about suffering. We talk a lot about, how our lives aren't meant to be as comfortable as possible, that we're not trying to give them you know, the cushiest life. We want to make them strong. And lately, we've been hiking the incline here in Manitou Springs. I don't know if you're
Yeah,
familiar with it, but it's
I am.
you're familiar. All right, cool. So
Yeah.
2,768 steps, and there's never hardly. I mean, once in a while you'll see a kid on it, but my 3 boys are on it on a regular basis, just training on it, and it makes you feel like your legs are like putty when you're on it. I mean, it breaks you. And now we're doing multiple reps sometimes, and we talk about like, yeah, we could, you could easily be sitting in front of the television right now. You could be entertaining your brain while you're not really getting strong. And but the truth is that we don't want to live in other people's stories. We want to be living our own story. In fact, like the great life is one that where other people want to write the movie about your life or tell the story that you're living. And it's like I don't want to live in I don't want to live in fairyland of stories. I want to be in the great story with my kids. And to get there, we have to prepare our bodies. We have to prepare our minds for that. And so at every level, there's a bit of preparation. Getting ready for El Cap, there was another really important thing I would do too called visualizing, where each night as we're talking Sam, I would give him a scenario that he would have to come up with an answer for. And so it would work kind of like this. I'd say, Sam, we're on pitch 15 and it just started to rain and you slid across the rock and you skinned your knee. What are we going to do? And he'll tell you, he'll say, well, first thing is I got to get my rain jacket on. Then if my knee's bleeding, I need to get, yeah, I'm sure you'll have a Band-Aid for me, but we've got to get to we've got to get to camp. That'll be 2 more pitches to camp because we have it all mapped out on his wall. We got to get to that camp. And so he began to think about it in a way where he could visualize what mattered. Whereas if you didn't do that, the initial response to that situation, not just for a kid, but for anyone, would be, I need to go down. I need to get to my mom as fast as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but because he had visualized it, when scenarios did break down, and which they did on El Capitan, and there were some things that did not go as planned, he could adapt and see that, like, this is what we have to do. This is what the security is in that next camp. It's not. It's not in leaving our major goal.
Yeah. And how many nights were you on El Capitan?
So it was 4 nights and then
Okay.
1 night at the summit. So it was, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a couple things that did not go as planned.
Yes. So there was a party in front of us that got a haul bag stuck on a flake, and that haul bag, like, for one, we were first of all afraid it was gonna, just the way it was over this flake, it was hanging directly over us. It was terrifying to us because I was like, if they cut that line, we are in trouble.
Mm,
And so, like, we were dealing with that, but there was no way to pass in the situation we were in. So that took them like 3 or 4 hours of, like, trying to get this haul bag unstuck.
mm,
And because of that, we had to climb through the night. And I remember just saying to Sam, tonight it's going to be hard, it's going to be cold, and it's going to be really scary. Okay. Because what happens is on El Capitan, you look down with your headlamp, like, and it's like your light is just absorbed into nothing.
mm.
It's like it shines on nothing.
Yeah.
And, like, you can't you it's hard to even comprehend that. It's one to, like, comprehend it, like, in a cave where you're standing. It's a whole different thing when you're hanging from anchors and, like, you look down and it's like you can't even see Earth anymore. Um, and for a kid, and, like, he pushed through it, and it was like, it was like kind of our finest hour on the mountain.
Wow. It's amazing. I can't even, it's hard to even imagine, but yeah, I mean, it's truly impressive what y'all have done. I guess I'm curious because you said, you talked about, like, you want to be in the story. You don't want to be the one watching the story. And I'm curious how the kids have embraced that philosophy because obviously they're doing it.
Yeah, I think they're just starting to get it. They're starting to really reason through it. Here's one way that it's being embraced. So I'm beginning to talk to Sam about, hey, this next year, I want you to have a lot more input on your goal for not this summer's, but next summer's. And he watches a lot of, like, Dude Perfect, and these Instagrammers. He wants to be an Instagrammer someday, or some kind of influencer, like all kids do. And there's a guy that, like, traveled across America. He started with a penny and he kept trading it, but he would trade it and sell the item to, like, kind of fund his travel. And Sam watched all the episodes of this crazy idea, and now he wants to do something like that. And so, like, he's beginning to think about it in this way of, like, this crazy big story, this difficult challenge. He wants to throw a mountain in on it. And yeah, he started, like, I think it's actually, I can't figure out how to do it yet. It still feels like a cake that's missing an ingredient, even when I tell it to you. But now I see him beginning to formulate, kind of this storytelling lifestyle. And even this summer, climbing Pingora and climbing Wolf's Head with Joey and Sylvan, those are the first mountains I climbed with my wife. I mean, those, like we said about our story, like, we're bonding our story with their story,
Yeah.
and it's a big part of our family dynamic is to live a story. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah. So we talked about the three rules, but the three rules are kind of part of a bigger philosophy that you guys have on parenting. And I wonder if we could get into that a little bit. I'd love to hear sort of your philosophy on parenting.
Well, there's so many parts to that philosophy. But when I think about First of all, it's like we want hard kids. We want courageous kids. You can't give a kid things like, "Hey, I'm gonna open up this book over here. I'm gonna read you some stories, and you're gonna become courageous."
Mhm.
Like, it just doesn't work like that. You can't do that. Like, you have to the role of a parent is to architect an environment to where a child can actually find the things that you want. And so it's like that's what we do. We are trying to create a space for our children to actually develop their core character. And the first of your character is your courage. That really is the thing that founds everything else. And courage, it's so important, isn't about not having fear. We talk a lot about this as a family too. It's like
Mhm.
fearless people are very dangerous people. Like, we're not about not having fear. It's about having fear and pushing into it. You fear was put there to keep us alive. It was put there to, you know, basically be a warning light when something is going wrong, like, but we have to be able to know that, like, okay, I can reason through this situation. It's not actually, it's the warning light's going off, but I see the anchors, I see how it's all set up, and I trust my dad, and you begin to push through that. And it's like you begin to reason through things like that. That's what courage is. Courage is, trusting your training and your experience and your knowledge against the warnings that God's given you to slow down or stop or turn around.
Yes, and we talk about fear a lot on this podcast, and I want to come back to it. Before we do that, though, you started this part of the conversation saying I want to raise hard, courageous kids, and I wonder if you could just
Yes.
elaborate on that. What's behind that? Why do our kids
Yeah,
need to be hard and courageous?
we have a world now where these kids are really soft. They're the the world that most kids are growing up in is not creating these great savages. They're nothing like the people that settled the West, and it's just it's the figment of just this safe world that's been designed. There's a great book called The Comfort Crisis, and it talks about how, like, how we used to be this apex predator that could go out and take down a saber-toothed tiger. It's like we used to be, I mean, like, it's like every day you had to wake up and you had to go out with a spear, and you had to run down an animal until it was totally exhausted, kill it, cut it up, then bring it back, and on the way back, there might be some other people that want that meat. You have to fight them off, just to provide for your family. Oh, by the way, if you trip and break your ankle, you die. Okay. If you get a cut and you get an infection, you die. Like, it's like your body has to be in the most amazing shape. Well, nowadays, like, all the things I'm saying is crazy. Like, that's not how the world is. Now it's like, you can break an arm, you can break a leg. There's no need to go hunt for anything. Like, our lives are engineered in a way that it is so safe and is so, protected, that if we don't intentionally make our bodies hard, we don't intentionally make our minds strong and courageous, we won't be that. We don't automatically gain those things because of our ancestors. We have to actually engineer ourselves to that point of that kind of strength. And I may never be able to take down the saber-tooth tiger, but I want my kids to enter into a world where they're going to face massive challenges, and they're going to remember deep in their soul, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I remember a time when I was 8 and I looked up at El Capitan from the bottom, and it was possible. That's what I want.
Yeah, so the goal setting is basically feeding this um, philosophy of raising these hard, courageous kids that are able to take on the biggest of life's challenges. This is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not about them being professional rock climbers.
So then if we come back to the fear, like, how are you teaching the fear piece to them as part of this overall journey?
Regularly talking about it. Right? I mean, Sam, people say to Sam, "I'm too afraid to do that." They'll say that to Sam, and he would say this when he was 7, 6, 7, and 8. He would walk right up and say, You say, well, you know how to overcome the fear, right? And they'd say, what? And they say, well, you just have to start doing the thing that you're afraid of. Start doing it in smaller amounts and move toward it, which is interesting because that's philosophically the opposite of what's happening to kids at college. They have said they have something like, "Oh, I'm triggered by this
Yeah.
thing." And so what do? They insulate you from it. They warn you so that you don't get into it. It's like, no, I want to develop kids that are like, okay, well, if I have an insecurity or something that's creating anxiety for me, it's like I want to be a person and I want to have kids that actually want to push into that and say, I need to become stronger, more adapted to the scenario because I don't want to be in this situation where I don't have control over myself because bam, I have this anxiety attack. And which is a real thing for people. I'm not denying that. It's just do we want to be, diagnosing people and saying we want you to push harder into a little more into it, to work on it, develop it, or do we want to develop people where we say, oh, just cut that off, never have that, that thing happen to you again, never, oh, you're afraid of heights, don't go on anything high, don't ever
Right.
fly, don't ever stand on a stairway. I mean, those are two different philosophies.
Yeah.
We want to develop strong kids that can overcome these environments and they have a way in which they can, manage their fear.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
I'm somebody that believes like, yin and yang of life, like the balance, like the both end of things. And I guess I'm just curious, like for you, um, is there any risk of setting these big goals and achieving such big things of the kids getting to a point where they think they're invincible?
Yeah, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of that. And that's one of the reasons why I brought up the soloing piece
Yeah.
to you, and that we talk about that. I'm always concerned about that piece. My kids are not. But one of the things we talk a lot about in the mountains, because when you're in the mountains, there's never a time when you're more like in touch with your mortality. It's
Yeah.
like, we talk about it. Like, first of all, I tell my kids, I'm gonna die, that this isn't, you don't live forever and you're gonna die. And you could die any minute, and like we talk about how fragile we are. And a lot of, to me, mountain climbing is about really comprehending what I call the smallness of your greatness. So it's like you're on the mountain and it's like you're this infinitesimal dot that someone can't even see, and yet you're doing this thing that is so impossible to you, but it's really small in the scheme of things of the universe. And the more I can get my kids to comprehend that and comprehend, the value of their life, I think it helped them through that. But um, there's a part of invincibility that's really good, and then there's another part of invincibility that people develop that comes with arrogance that is really bad. And in climbing, I see them both, and at the end of the day, we all have to choose what to do with our strength, and how to apply it. And I don't want kamikaze kids.
Right.
I want
Well,
kids that really
rule
respect their
number
lives.
3 is pretty clear, right? Don't die. That means
Exactly.
we've got to be safe in the things that we're doing.
We do it. Everything we do, it has an airtight plan. I mean, we were on
Yeah.
El Capitan. There was three expert climbers, three
Yeah.
ex climbers that have climbed El Capitan many times, all watching the 8-year-old, all with their attention on the 8-year-old. Like, he was clipping in and clipping out, but we were there watching everything he was doing. Like, you know what I mean? There was never a time when, like, he was on his own on the wall.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's rule number 3. And I think as my kids get older, there's gonna be more separation between me and them on these climbs we do, but it's hopefully I'm engineering into them, "Hey, we're not gonna die." And sometimes, a saying they have in the mountains, is, "We're not gonna die we might die tomorrow, but we're not gonna die today," And, like, it's important no matter how bad it gets in a storm, like, we try to remember that.
It's amazing. You guys have uh, attracted a lot of media attention. I'm just curious what that's been like for you, for your wife, and for the kids.
Well, at first it was pretty hard because there was with that media attention, and we're talking massive global, I mean, 1,600 articles written on Sam, all of these interviews, which really I felt developed another set of skills for him, helped him to overcome another series of fears that everyone has. I loved all that about it. What was really hard was the incoming traffic of comments, which is probably only a few percentage of people, but there are some really mean people. And the amount of people I get these messages that say, I'm calling CPS on you, that's Child Protective Services, basically we should have your kids taken away. You should be in prison. And it's like, and I just think to myself, really? Like, that's your solution is take my kids, put them into foster care and in front of a television instead of like developing them to be great, humans that are going to like have a positive impact on the world. But to some people, that kind of stuff begin to weigh on me, and especially would weigh on Anne. That was
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. How was it for her?
Really hard, actually. That was a point where she went off social media and she just had to stop reading it. But that's the hardest part is that anytime it's kind of like, anytime you try to get out of the matrix, people try to like jam you back in. They try to fight you back in. And it's like, in a way, like, I feel like we have something unique and exciting going, that really fits our family. And so many other people that don't have that are like, no, you should do life like we do. You should be as scared of everything like we are. and, and, that's hard,
It is.
but,
And
when you know your why, that's what matters.
when you know your why, that's what matters. I'd love if we could just elaborate just a little bit more on that, because like you guys are doing this very unique thing. And you just said, if you know your why, like that's all that matters. But it is hard when you have like, we call them the haters, right? Like the critics, like what is that like? And how did you guys as a family like decide to push through that?
You mean push through with the haters? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just about like I had to reason through. Do I think that this is irresponsible? Do I think that I'm being like a terrible parent that's involved in child endangerment? Or is this actually the best thing for my child? Like people say, you're doing this just for yourself. You're just doing this. As I even said, I set the goals. You're doing this because they're your goals. You're doing this because it's about you. All that incoming noise. And I had reason through it. Be like, is that true? I should hold on. I should call that into check and say, am I doing this for me? Or is this about the boys I'm developing? And once you know your why, once you say, no, I believe this is the best thing for my kids. It's just like a parent that decides, you know what? I'm not going to buy crappy snacks anymore. I'm going to feed my kids, natural products. It's like they know their why. Like you can't convince them of anything else. And it's like it's the same way. It's like I realized that no, this is the best thing. And there are risks. There are absolutely risks. We could at any time, you know, be be covered in rockfall and crushed. Like at any time, like that could happen. Um, but the risks have to be compared against the rewards and what we want for our children, just like anybody does. You could make the same thing and say, driving your kids somewhere is probably the most unsafe thing you do. So it's like you have to value, like, well, what's more important, going to that thing you want to take your kid to, or putting them in a bubble. So like when you really know your why, it helps you, have some of that Kevlar against the haters. But
Yeah.
there's
And
still,
and how
there's those people.
how do you and your wife like stay aligned on some of these things?
It's a good question too, because we don't always agree on it, like about the haters. Because for her, she takes it a little more personally, a little quicker. Um, we talk about it, we talk it through. We say, how are we going to handle this, or how do we handle that? Like because in some ways, like on Instagram, you'll see if you go on Instagram, 99.9% of the people that hate us, I leave their stuff up. Like I just leave it up. And the reason I leave it up is because there's people out there that defend us. And when they defend us, that's what creates this community online, and then everything we have grows, and more people see our content, and or more people engage with us and get more excited about us. And so for me, I'm like, I leave it up, but me and Ann have to talk about that. And sometimes she says, "No, I think this should come down." And so we take it down, And so but it's just a continual conversation between us two because yeah, in a way, we're pushing into some things that are outside of our comfort zones too.
Yeah. Well, you guys are so intentional. My sense is, like you said, when you know your why, like the decision is easy. My sense is that you guys, are continuously refining and making sure that you are aligned on that why.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we have to remind each other. Sometimes I have to be like, okay, well, let's go back over it, Ann. Like, is this decision the best thing for our kid,
Yeah.
for Sam? And she says,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can see in him, you see this inner confidence in him that's just incredible. Like I took him scuba diving. At 10, you can become a PADI certified. It's the youngest you can scuba dive in the US. And the scuba dive instructor told us, he said, I have never taken someone like through this course that was more calm and more chill than your son. He literally could do all of the exercises, and Sam threw all of his gear in the pool, dove under the pool, and put it all on underwater, first try. And it's like most people go underwater and they get something wrong and they just panic, but Sam has developed certain things that we have helped him find. And it's like we know our why, and it's like I can see that now. I see that's why we're doing what we're doing.
He is a confident kid. What's upcoming for you and your family?
So the big trip is the Cirque of the Towers in the Wind River Range. This place would be as famous as Yosemite if there was a road there, but it takes 2 days to kind of hike a 5-year-old in.
Yeah.
And there's just sheer granite peaks everywhere, and we're gonna do a whole series of those next week. And we've got a number of other big objectives this year that can't tell you about yet, but they're international. Um, and we also are just we the biggest, most exciting thing is that we're also having a baby. And so we got a baby coming in December.
Whoa, congrats. That's amazing.
It's I'm planning an epic gender reveal that is going to involve elephant toothpaste, and we're just excited about that. The
Oh,
boys are trying to
man.
pick names. Yeah.
How fun. That is so cool. Congrats. Like, there's so much more to your story, and there's more to come. And, we might just have to have a sequel to this episode. Um, but if people want to learn more about you and your family and your philosophy, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just follow us on social media. Look up the Evermores. You'll find us on Facebook or Instagram. And then if you want to follow Sam, it's just Sam Adventure or Samuel Adventure, depending on whether it's Facebook or Instagram. And I wanted to say one last thing to you. When I think about the Inspire Campfire concept, at the end of the day, that's all we really have. That's what we get to keep. It's the only thing that we really get to kind of take with us and really leave behind is our story. And so it's like when you're at a campfire, that's all you got. It does not matter what kind of gear you have. It matters the stories that you carry. And it's like those are the things that we should be investing in. And so I love the vision that you have for your podcast, and I'm looking forward to following some more of your stories.
Well, I really appreciate that. And it was a great segue because your story, your whole family story, is so epic. Hollywood's definitely going to make a movie at some point. And I ask everybody that comes on the show, when they do make that movie, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play Joe in your movie?
I was thinking Mark Wahlberg. He seems like
Yeah.
a fun, exciting, adventurous guy trying to figure things out.
So good. I love that for you. And what's your movie going to be called?
Well, the movie that I really want to come out is called Becoming Evermore, and that's
Ooh.
we'll have to do that in another show. But our name was originally Baker, and we changed that to Evermore. And this really life-changing series of events that took us there. It was no act of rebellion at all. It was really, um, a reset on who we were.
That is the teaser for the next episode that we do together, Joe. Thank you so much for your time today. Becoming Evermore, starring Mark Wahlberg, like that's going to be epic. I can't wait to see that movie. And I just really appreciate your openness with me today and just spending some time. And for those listening, hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Joe's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Joe, thank you for being here today.
All right, catch you later.